Sapphire, Bianca, Amy, Danielle, Riley. The 5 people who sent me these 5 true weird entity stories. God, thank you I got those names right. Anyways, get ready for this video. If you guys want a part 2, send me more of your own weird encounters with weird creatures. Without further ado, grab a blanket, turn off your light for 5 true scary stories about encounters with weird entities, man. Monsters or demons? I'm a transgender person and a Satanist, but actually, these are the least strangest things about me. I have a gift, and I've seen some really messed up things over the years. Most people I tell who believe me about what I can see will say something along the lines of, "That's so cool." Well, sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. Seeing spirits isn't limited to the nice ones, nor are all spirits I see human. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around some things I saw when I was a little kid. When I was around 12 years old, I was on a week-long school excursion to a sleepaway camp in the Catskill Mountains of New York. They had some unoriginal, not particularly scary legend about a man who died while painting the historic mansion on the property and now left green handprints wherever he haunted. Never mind that. The real spooky thing that happened was when I saw something in the fireplace room. All I can remember is that it was pitch black, like a living shadow, but did not have a human shape. It looked like it had tentacles and crawled very quickly up the wall. Even scarier than this, though, and something I've only recently remembered, are the things I saw while I was at my grandfather's in Florida. I became fixated on demons that took animalistic forms. If you dig around, there are plenty of lore of this, such as the Hellcat that terrorized Washington, D.C. These things, however, while they seem somewhat feline, were unlike any living animal I had ever seen before. I remember drawing them. Not to say I made them up in my head, because there are a lot of times when I have channeled via drawings. I gave them some weird names, starting with the letter Z. They were lynx-like, but had long tails, with a tuft of fur on the end like a lion, with stripes beneath that, like a cheetah. They had bright red eyes and humanoid hands, fingertips with black claws. The night I saw them, I was looking out a window at my grandfather's. When my family visits Daytona Beach, we'll stay at his house, which is in a small town only about an hour away. I had a room to myself where I slept on a couch. I looked out a window facing the street and saw 2 or 3 of these weird cat-like monsters walking by. They didn't notice me. They spoke amongst each other in an unrecognizable language. To this day, I'm not sure if it was Latin, as demons are known to speak, or something alien. I just don't know. Since then, I've encountered Native American spirits, demonic entities, and sat in on a group meditation in which I have seen the surface of Mars before it went barren. Like I said, some pretty weird shit. Haunted doll. Okay, so you'll probably ignore the story, but I still try. Not many scary things happened to me, but this was the creepiest by far. Please give it a chance. Thank you. So, about 2 years ago, my sister got this old collector's doll from my grandmother. At first, me and my sister loved the doll. She literally named it Annabelle. This was before the movie came out, and we had never watched a movie with a doll named Annabelle either. I think my grandma recommended the name, but that's not important. This doll was made of glass, with blonde curly porcelain hair. We played with it all the time, but soon it was merely left in the closet, and we grew out of it. It gradually got creepier. I had a big imagination, as many kids do at my age. I now thought this doll was terrifying. The way its eyes just looked at you made my hair stand up. My house was a small apartment with 3 bedrooms. Only my room is important to the story, though. I share this room with my sister. We had a bunk bed in there, and I slept on the bottom. A sliding closet with 2 huge mirrors on it was where the doll was kept, in the same room. The night that this happened, we went to bed as usual. I fell asleep, looking away from the closest mirrors, afraid of what I might see. After, I would say, a few hours of sleep, I woke up to the closet door opening. I really did not want to turn around. I lay there in complete silence, waiting for something to happen. The image of the doll's face appeared in my head. I gathered enough courage and rolled to the other side, facing my closet. The doll was right there. Its scrawny, cold hands wrapped tightly around my throat. I tried to scream, nothing came out. Its eyes still seemed to have its cold, dead stare, but it was looking at me. I could feel I was crying, but I soon lost consciousness. The next morning, I awoke. I felt scared. I looked to the closet and nothing moved. I told my family, and none of them believed me, chalking it up as a dream. I don't think this was a dream. It was too real. A year later, we moved to a new apartment. My sister kept the doll. I found the doll under her bed with a missing foot. Nothing has happened since, but it still creeps me out. My sister keeps it on a special little table with another doll, and always fixes them up. Maybe it was a dream, and I understand if you don't believe me, but I would bet my life this happened. I believe that maybe the doll was angry that we had forgotten about it, but now that it is getting attention, not as much as it did before, but enough to calm it. I think that's why it has not done anything, although I still occasionally just look at the doll. I don't like the doll. I always stare daggers at it, letting it know my feelings towards the damn thing. Thank you if you made it this far. I'm sorry if I sounded dumb. I've never sent in a scary story to a YouTuber, and I know you asked for wood scary stories, but I don't have any that would be interesting enough. Keep up the amazing work with your channel, and I can't wait for the ghost stories while hiking video. Doppelganger, demon, or just a ghost? As a side note, thank you for reading out my Ghost in the Woods stories. Love the video, thought I'd send some more experiences. So, within my family, it has always been debated whether it is the family that is haunted or simply the house. Activity began with simple things, such as the kettle turning on itself or the TV flipping through channels. It wasn't until one evening, everyone was sitting in the living room watching TV, when my brother decided to make himself a drink. Now the counters sit on one side of the kitchen, and the back door on the other. A minute or so passes, and my brother comes back into the living room with a confused look on his face. He pointed to me and said, "I thought you just walked past me and out the back door. I swear I..." We all gave him a confused look, as my mom added, "She hasn't moved from the sofa, son." I got up and checked the back door. It was still locked, and no one had moved from their seats. We shrugged it off as my brother telling stories. The next day, my mom had arrived home from work. No one was in, as at the time, I was attending school along with my brother and sister, and my dad was working. My mom sat down her bag and heard a voice, my voice, calling for her from the upstairs. "Mom! Mommy! Mom! Where are you?" My mom yelled up, before realizing no one was in. She knew I was at school. She had dropped me there herself. She went up the stairs just to make sure, and there was no one there. No one at all. She went about her day telling me this when I got home, swearing it was my voice she heard. A few weeks passed and no sightings or hearings happened, until my sister had some friends over for a sleepover. I decided to join in. Everyone was in the living room laughing, having a chat. One of the girls went upstairs to use the bathroom. Moments later, running down the stairs screaming. I managed to calm her down, and she explained that she had come out of the bathroom and swore she glanced into my parents' room and saw me sitting on the bed, flicking through the channels on my parents' TV. I apparently glanced over to her and gave her a creepy grin, but I was downstairs, and I hadn't moved from my seat. I don't understand whether it was a doppelganger, a demon using my image, or just a ghost with eerie similarities to me. I would love some ideas from people in the comments. Thanks. Evil spirit or ghost story. Hi, Horror Studio 1. I would love my experience narrated by you. This is something that happened about 6 months ago. For some background information, I grew up in a religious household, which means my family believe in the supernatural. Spirits, angels, God, the devil, we believe it. My parents have told me stories, and I have my own stories with dealing with the supernatural growing up. I could see things when I was young, and as I grew up, every now and then, I would see something in the house. I also have stories of sleep paralysis, astral projection, and lucid dreaming if you're interested in hearing those another time. Christmas 2015, my then fiance bought me a huge panda bear that was almost as tall as me. I loved it and slept with it in my bed. After we got married and I moved into his apartment, there wasn't much room for the panda, so he placed it in a storage closet. Now, what happened this day is something that has not happened to me in over a decade. After moving in, I kept feeling weird sleeping in the bedroom, especially when by myself. I always got that strong sensation it's coming from something or someone watching me. I just brushed it off and figured the feeling was being in a new place. On this night, my husband woke up out of the blue and saw me shaking as if I was having a seizure. He was going to call 911 when I woke up, sat right up and gasped. I see a white hooded figure standing over him on the right side of the bed, peeking at us. My heart is bursting out of my chest. It's been a long time since I've seen an entity. He asked what was wrong. I said there was something looking at us. He turns to look in front of our bed, where the TV stand is, and said it's sitting on the table. Immediately, he grabbed me and began to pray in Jesus' name and rebuke whatever spirit it was. It went away. Neither one of us could sleep the rest of the night. We stayed up, discussing what he saw and what I saw. While what I saw was a white hooded figure, his was a black hooded figure, crouching on the table. The next morning, he says, Do you think the panda has something to do with it? Because I get an eerie feeling when I walk past that. I tell him I feel the same way whenever I look at it too. Even our dog barks at it and tries to attack it. We contemplated the whole day on whether or not we should throw it out. So, the following day he goes to work and I'm alone with the dogs. I decide to cleanse the house using the anointing oil my parents gave me and pray. Every time I walk past the closet with the panda and say Jesus, my whole body would get cold, and I would get shivers and goosebumps all over. I called my husband and told him what happened, and when he came home, he threw it out. It felt a little better in the apartment, but not too long after, things started happening again. So, I had my dad come over and pray, and things were much better after that. So, for almost 2 weeks, things were calm. Our upstairs neighbor is a strange woman who never leaves her house and hardly sleeps. I can hear her around 1 a.m. in the morning, moving stuff and walking around every single night. I always get weird vibes from her. So anyways, when my husband first moved in, she gave us some groceries. Fast forward to a few days after my dad comes and prays, she gives us a chew toy and snack for our dogs. Shortly afterwards, that feeling of being watched returned. And that night, I had just dozed off when I felt the bed shaking. I look at my husband and he's shaking just like I was in the previous incidents. I looked over by our closed bedroom door and this humanoid creature is crawling on the ceiling trying to hide in the darkness of the corner. It was hard to make out, but I know it was a grayish dark color and had some type of small horns. I didn't know what to do at this point. I'm not as spiritually strong as my parents, so just praying wouldn't be good enough. I turned on a song called Jesus, 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 and put it on low on repeat and was able to fall back asleep. I've long thought it had something to do with whatever my neighbor is into. Usually, the same time she wakes in the early morning is when I get that eerie feeling of being watched. Something I also noticed between these two incidences, I always lucid dream, meaning I know that I am dreaming and can manipulate my dreams and even sometimes drag them out longer when I want to. I've been doing this since I was around 8 years old. I also always remember them when I wake up. During these two occurrences, I didn't lucid dream and believe what was going on was actually reality. Plus, after waking up, I could not remember what happened in them. It felt as if whatever that spirit is was implanting those dreams into my head. I threw out the dog toy and had both my parents come back and pray and do a cleansing with the oil. Every now and then, I don't pray throughout the house, and that feeling comes back. And I can see shadows move out of the corner of my eye, so I had to constantly pray and anoint the house every few weeks. Our lease is up in April, and hopefully we can move. Thank you for taking the time to read this story. I know it's pretty long. My paranormal experiences. Hey HS1, I'm a longtime watcher and a huge fan of your channel, so I thought I'd submit my own ghost stories. I'll say this right now, I'm a terrible storyteller, so hopefully this is clear enough. All three of these are pretty short and all ghost related. No creepy stalkers or skinwalkers, just plain spooky ghosts, or so I think. I'd like some help on some of these as to what it was. Not sure if this is important, but I'm a female, and all three of these stories took place in Southern California. Enough talking now, so here's the first one. The Detective Shadow. I was about 7 or 8 years old when this story happened, so my memory of it is pretty vague. Me and my family were living in the summer home, and I had trouble sleeping over the summer. That's just a growing up thing, I guess. I shared a room with my little sister in a room down the hall from my parents' room. My parents' room had a small desk on the right of their bed, with a desktop computer on it. So one night, I unsurprisingly had trouble sleeping, and when walking down the dark hall to the room my parents were staying in, as I'm standing in the doorway, whisper yelling to my dad so he could come and help me get a glass of water, I see something moving. In the moonlight, I could see a figure standing by the desk. It wasn't looking at me, so I wasn't alarmed, but it was a person, a normal-looking human. I don't remember if it was transparent, but I don't think it was. The figure was wearing a detective outfit, like full-on Sherlock Holmes cloak, hat, and all. It was holding this magnifying glass looking at something. I was 8 or so at the time, so I don't mess with ghosts and ran back to my room. When I was younger, I had this theory that whenever there was music or noise, monsters or ghosts couldn't come out, so I flipped on Disney Channel and watched whatever old movies they showed at midnight until I fell back asleep. I didn't tell my parents about this until maybe 5 years later. I had a very active imagination as a kid that had totally vanished now, but I used to often create scenarios in my head, and I sometimes wonder if I made this up, because I have a clear image in my head of the detective dude, but nothing else. Second story. Coincidence or sign? This happened about 2 years ago in the fall. I had just lost a close friend of mine, who I had still been grieving at the time. We had always made a pact that whoever died first would send the other a sign that they were okay. I never thought it would happen, as we made it as more of a joke. As I remember this pact, I spent the next week begging for them to send me a sign. From crying alone and whispering to them to give me a sign, to sobbing and screaming their name, I was a mess. But everyone is when they lose someone close. But anyways, back to the story. I was still enjoying memories I had with him, and I remembered him saying that he enjoyed power outages. I laughed quietly to myself, remembering his goofy personality, and the power went out. I heard my sister scream because she was in the shower, but I didn't care. My friend had finally answered, or as I like to think. It could have been a giant coincidence, but I like to think of it as a sign. What do you guys think? Third story. Calico Ghost Town. Here in California, we have a small ghost town by the name of Calico. It's a beautiful tourist attraction and such a sweet place. It's still operated and has a ton of activities, but also an actual graveyard. Me and my family came up one day and we spent the day visiting a funhouse, panning for gold flakes and painting. My mom is a horror fan. I'll even include a mini bonus story of hers, but she waited until night to take us to the graveyard. We drove up, and we were the only ones there. We all get out of our car and walk around a little bit. Suddenly, a rock is thrown at my brother. We all look at my other sister, who would always do things like that, but she had her hands in her hoodie. We all looked around, but we all decided to get out of there. Mini bonus story from my mom. Everyone has their creepy Ouija board story, and here is my mother's. When my mom was a teenager, she had some friends decide to play the Ouija board. After a while, they asked the board something, and the power of the entire block went out. They quickly said goodbye and put the board away. Sorry these were long, but thank you for reading, and once again, a huge fan. Best regards.